He never expected his life to change because of one simple question. Every morning he woke up before sunrise in a small rented room that barely had space for a bed, a desk, and a single chair. The ceiling fan made a tired, rattling sound, and the walls were covered with old posters he had used to hide the cracks. But to him, that little room was a symbol of hope. He was a student at the local university, studying hard for a degree in business administration. He knew that education was the only way out of the struggles his family had faced for generations. His mother worked long hours in a garment factory, and every month she sent him a small amount from her wages, apologizing that it wasn't enough. But he always told her not to worry. He was proud, not ashamed. He wanted to prove that even someone from nothing could rise through effort and honesty. To cover his rent and food, he worked evenings at a small cafe near the hospital. The owner liked him because he was polite to customers and never complained. But the truth was, every night after his shift, he would sit alone, counting coins to see if he could make it through the week. The bills never stopped, and the dreams always seemed just out of reach. One evening, as he was locking up the cafe, he heard a noise outside. A man had fallen on the sidewalk, groaning in pain. Without thinking, the student rushed to help. The man looked weak and pale, maybe in his late 60s. The student tried to lift him, but the man's leg seemed injured. Just then, a woman in a white uniform ran toward them from the hospital entrance. "Step aside, please," she said softly, kneeling beside the old man. Her tone was calm but firm. She checked his pulse, then looked up and said, "We need to get him inside. Can you help me carry him?" He nodded immediately. Together, they supported the old man and carefully brought him into the hospital. Once inside, she guided them to the emergency area, where a team quickly took over. The student stood near the doorway, unsure if he should leave or stay. The nurse returned, brushing a strand of hair away from her face. "Thank you," she said with a warm smile. "You helped save valuable time." He smiled shyly, rubbing the back of his neck. "I just did what anyone would do." She looked at him for a moment. "Not everyone would stop," she said quietly. Then she excused herself and went back to her duties. He watched her walk away, not knowing why her words stayed in his mind. There was something about her presence, kind, grounded, yet confident, that lingered long after he left the hospital that night. Days passed, and life returned to its usual rhythm. He went to class in the mornings, studied in the library during breaks, and worked evenings at the cafe. But one thing was different. He kept thinking about that nurse. He didn't even know her name, yet her image stayed with him. He would pass by the hospital occasionally, half hoping to see her again. Then one Friday, a notice went up on the university board. It was about the upcoming annual college dance, a formal evening where students would dress up, celebrate, and forget about exams for one night. It was a big event, something people looked forward to for months. But for him, it was just another reminder of what he didn't have. He couldn't afford fancy clothes or the ticket fee. His friends were already talking about their outfits and who they were going with, while he stayed quiet, pretending he wasn't interested. That night, while cleaning tables at the cafe, he overheard a group of students laughing and talking about the dance again. One of them joked, "Even if I had no date, I'd rather stay home than show up alone." The words hit him harder than expected. Maybe it was pride or maybe loneliness, but deep down, he wanted to experience that feeling too, just once. Later, when the cafe was nearly empty, he saw her again, the nurse from the hospital. She walked in quietly, wearing her uniform, looking tired but peaceful. She ordered a cup of tea and sat near the window. He hesitated before approaching her table. "You're from the hospital, right? The other night with the old man?" She looked up and smiled. "Yes, I remember you." "You helped," he nodded awkwardly. "Yeah, I just wanted to thank you for that day. You handled everything so calmly." She laughed softly. "It's part of the job. You did more than most people would." There was a short silence. He could feel his heart pounding, unsure what to say next. Then, out of nowhere, the words slipped out of his mouth. "Can I ask you something strange?" Her eyebrows lifted slightly, curious. "Go ahead," he swallowed hard. "Would you, maybe, be my companion to the university dance next week?" For a moment, she didn't answer. He immediately regretted saying it. "I'm sorry," he said quickly. "That was stupid. You must think I'm crazy." But to his surprise, she laughed, not mockingly but softly, as if touched by his honesty. "You're not crazy," she said. You just asked sincerely. That's rare. He looked up, uncertain. So, is that a no? She smiled, resting her chin on her hand. It's a yes, he blinked. Really? Yes, she said simply. I could use a night of fun too. He felt his face grow warm. He wasn't sure if he was dreaming. For the first time in a long while, he walked home with a smile that wouldn't fade. Over the next few days, everything felt lighter. He borrowed a suit from a friend, patched up the torn pocket himself, and polished his old shoes until they almost looked new. He spent hours rehearsing what he might say to her, though he knew he'd probably forget it all when the moment came. Meanwhile, at the hospital, the nurse finished her shift and looked at herself in the mirror of the staff room. She had said yes without really knowing why. Maybe it was because she saw something honest in his eyes, something she rarely found in people around her. What he didn't know was that she wasn't just an ordinary nurse. She was the daughter of the hospital's CEO, working there in secret under her middle name. Her father had wanted her to understand life from the ground, not from an office chair. She preferred to live simply, away from the constant attention and expectations that came with her family's name. As the night of the dance approached, both felt nervous. He feared he might embarrass her, while she worried he would find out who she really was. But when they finally met outside the event hall, both worries disappeared for a moment. He stood there in his borrowed suit, holding a small bouquet of wildflowers he had picked himself. She arrived wearing a simple blue dress, not extravagant but elegant in its own quiet way. When she saw him holding the flowers, she smiled. You didn't have to. I wanted to, he said, handing them to her. You make them look even better. Her cheeks turned slightly pink. They walked inside together, and for a while everything felt perfect. The lights were warm, the music gentle, and laughter filled the air. People stared when they entered, surprised to see the nurse with someone who clearly didn't fit the usual crowd. But he didn't notice. He was just happy to be there, with her. As they talked and shared stories, she laughed more than she had in months. He spoke about his dreams, his mother, and his hope of one day owning a small business to help people like him. She listened closely, touched by his sincerity. At one point he said quietly, You know, I almost didn't ask you that night. I thought you'd say no. She looked at him thoughtfully. And if I had said no? He smiled faintly. Then I'd still be glad I asked. Because for once I had the courage to try. Her heart softened. She realized that this was a man who didn't measure life by money or status, but by effort and truth. The music shifted to a slow tune. Hesitantly, he offered his hand. Would you like to dance? She nodded, and they moved to the floor. The lights dimmed slightly, and everything else faded away. The noise, the whispers, the judgments. For that short moment, it was just the two of them. He had never danced before, and he stumbled once or twice, making her laugh. Sorry, he said nervously. Don't be, she replied. You're doing fine. As they continued, he found himself looking into her eyes and realizing something strange. Peace. For someone who carried so much weight on his shoulders, he felt lighter than ever. He didn't know her story, and she didn't tell it. But both of them, in that quiet space of shared laughter and awkward steps, felt something genuine. A connection that crossed all barriers. When the song ended, he thanked her softly. She smiled and said, No, thank you for asking me. Neither of them knew it yet. But that one night, that one simple invitation, had already begun to change their lives forever. The night of the dance stayed in his heart long after it ended. When he walked her back to the hospital that evening, they didn't talk much. The city was quiet, and the moonlight followed them. Before saying goodbye, she smiled and said softly, Thank you for inviting me. I had a beautiful time. He wanted to say more, but words failed him. He just nodded and whispered, Me too. Then she turned and walked inside, leaving him standing there with a feeling he couldn't describe. A mix of happiness, confusion, and hope. The next few days felt different. He went to classes with a light heart, smiling without realizing it. His friends noticed the change and teased him, but he didn't mind. For the first time in a long time, his mind wasn't filled with worries about rent or bills. He thought about her, the nurse who had said yes when she could easily have laughed and walked away. He didn't know her full story, but he wanted to. Every evening after his cafe shift, he found himself walking toward the hospital, hoping to catch a glimpse of her. Sometimes he saw her through the glass doors, busy with patience, her hair tied back neatly. Other times, he just sat outside for a few minutes pretending to rest before heading home. One evening, luck was on his side. She came out carrying a paper bag and noticed him sitting near the hospital gate. "You again?" she said playfully. He smiled. "I was just passing by." "Long day?" She nodded. "Very long, but I don't mind it. I like helping people." He offered a quiet smile. "You're good at it. You make people feel safe." Her expression softened. "That's the nicest thing anyone said to me all week." She looked at the bag in her hand. "I bought extra sandwiches." "You hungry?" He laughed shyly. "Always." They sat together on a bench sharing sandwiches under the streetlights. They talked about small things, his studies, her long shifts, and the funny moments that happened at work. He told her about his mother back home, how she sent him small letters filled with encouragement and how he tried not to worry her about his struggles. "I wish my father wrote letters," she said quietly, "but he's too busy managing everything. I know he cares. He just shows it differently." He didn't know that her father was one of the most respected business figures in the city, the owner of several hospitals, including the one she worked in. To him, she was just a kind nurse with a gentle smile. As days turned into weeks, they continued meeting often. Sometimes, after her shift, they would take a short walk or sit by the lake near the campus. She would listen to him talk about his dreams of opening a small cafe one day. Not a fancy one, just a place filled with warmth where everyone could feel welcome. "You will do it," she said one evening. "I can see it in the way you speak about people. You care, and that's rare." He looked at her, wondering how someone like her could understand him so deeply. "You say that like you've seen a lot of people who don't care," he replied. She gave a small smile. "Maybe I have." At the hospital, however, her world was very different. Many of her co-workers didn't know who she really was. They just saw her as another nurse, hard-working and polite. But a few senior staff members knew she was the CEO's daughter working under a different name. They treated her with extra care, afraid to make mistakes. She didn't like that. She wanted to be seen as herself, not as someone born into privilege. At home, things were more complicated. Her father had begun to hear rumors about her spending time with a university boy. He asked her about it one evening during dinner. "I hear you've made a new friend," he said calmly. Setting down his fork, she looked up slowly. "Yes, he's a student. He helped someone outside the hospital once." "That's how we met." Her father raised an eyebrow. "A student. Does he know who you are?" "No," she said firmly. "And I'd like to keep it that way," he sighed. "You're free to make friends, but be careful. Not everyone sees you for who you are. Some only see opportunity." She didn't argue, but his words stung. She wanted to believe the student was different. He wasn't chasing money or status. He didn't even know she had any. He only saw her kindness. Meanwhile, the student had his own worries. His landlord had raised the rent, and his part-time job barely covered his expenses. But whenever he felt low, he thought of her laughter, her gentle words, the way she listened without judgment. She had become a quiet light in his difficult world. One afternoon, as he walked across campus, one of his classmates approached him with a smirk. "I saw you at the dance with that nurse from the hospital," the classmate said. "You know who she is, right?" He frowned. "She's a nurse." "What do you mean?" The other boy laughed. "You really don't know? She's not just any nurse. She's the daughter of the hospital's CEO. You're lucky she even looked at you." The student froze, staring in disbelief. "That's not true." "Ask anyone," the classmate said. "She's rich. Maybe she's just playing a game." The words burned in his mind long after the boy walked away. Could it be true? He didn't want to believe it. But that night, when he went to meet her outside the hospital, he couldn't look at her the same way. He smiled politely, but something inside him had shifted. She noticed immediately. "You seem quiet today. Something wrong?" He shook his head. "No, just tired." But she could see it, the distance in his eyes. She didn't push him, though. Instead, she handed him a small paper bag. "I brought you something." "You skip meals too often," he smiled faintly. "You don't have to keep doing that." "I want to," she said gently. He hesitated, then asked, "Can I ask you something? Are you really the daughter of the hospital's CEO?" Her hand froze midair. She looked at him, surprised but calm. "So you heard." He nodded slowly. "Why didn't you tell me?" She sighed softly. "Because it shouldn't matter." I wanted you to know me as me, not as someone's daughter. People treat me differently when they know. He looked away. You could have told me. I wouldn't have treated you differently, wouldn't you? She asked quietly. He didn't answer. He wanted to believe his own words, but he felt uneasy. His pride began to whisper things he didn't want to hear, that she was out of his league, that he didn't belong in her world. They sat in silence for a while, the noise of the city filling the gap between them. Finally, she said softly, I didn't mean to hide anything from you. I just wanted one friendship that felt normal. He nodded, still staring at the ground. I understand. Maybe it's better this way. What do you mean? She asked. Your world and mine, they're too different. He stood up slowly, his voice trembling. You belong somewhere I'll never reach. Before she could stop him, he walked away. She wanted to call out, but the words got stuck in her throat. She just sat there, watching him disappear into the distance, her eyes stinging with tears she didn't expect. That night, he lay awake in his tiny room, staring at the ceiling. He kept replaying her face in his mind, the way she looked hurt but said nothing. He hated himself for walking away, but he couldn't shake the feeling of being small, unworthy. Days passed in silence. She waited, hoping he would come by the hospital again, but he didn't. The bench near the gate stayed empty. She told herself that maybe it was for the best, that their paths were never meant to cross. But deep down she missed his presence, his awkward jokes, his sincerity. He tried to focus on his studies and work, but everything felt heavier now. The cafe no longer brought comfort, and even his classes felt dull. He realized how much joy she had unknowingly brought into his simple world, and how much emptier it was without her. One rainy evening, he walked past the hospital again, unable to resist. Through the glass doors, he saw her helping a child with a broken arm. Her smile was still the same, gentle and warm, just as he remembered. He stood there for a long time before turning away, whispering to himself, You deserve someone better than me. He didn't know it yet, but their story was far from over. Both of them were about to learn that love and kindness could bridge worlds that seemed impossible to connect. The night of the dance finally arrived. He had spent the entire afternoon preparing, cleaning his shoes until they shone and straightening his borrowed suit. He looked at himself in the cracked mirror of his small room, smoothing down his hair nervously. He felt a mix of excitement and fear. The thought of seeing her again filled him with warmth, but he couldn't ignore the uneasy feeling that he didn't belong. Outside, the city lights flickered against the dark streets. He walked slowly toward the event hall, clutching the small bouquet of wildflowers he had picked that morning. Each step felt heavier than the last, but he told himself, You can do this. Just be yourself. Meanwhile, she was finishing her shift at the hospital. Her uniform was neatly folded and tucked into her bag. She had chosen a simple blue dress for the evening, something elegant but not flashy. She wanted to feel like herself, not like the daughter of a wealthy CEO. As she looked at her reflection in the mirror of her small apartment, she couldn't help but smile. She was nervous too, but she was also excited. When he arrived at the entrance of the hall, his heart skipped a beat. She was already there, waiting near the steps. She smiled when she saw him, and for a moment everything else faded. He handed her the bouquet and she took it with both hands. They're beautiful, she said softly. You're welcome, he replied, trying to sound calm but failing. I wanted to give you something special tonight. Her cheeks turned slightly pink. You didn't have to, she whispered. They walked into the hall together, and immediately he noticed the stairs. Students whispered to each other as they passed, pointing toward the nurse. Some recognized her from the hospital, while others had heard rumors about her family. The poor student felt a sudden pang of self-consciousness. He wondered if she would regret saying yes standing next to someone so ordinary. She noticed his hesitation and squeezed his hand gently. Ignore them, she said quietly. Tonight is about us, not them. He nodded, taking a deep breath. Her words gave him courage, and together they stepped onto the dance floor. The hall was beautifully decorated with soft golden lights hanging from the ceiling and flowers scattered across the tables. The music played, and students moved gracefully across the floor. Some of them laughed and chatted in groups while others danced in pairs. Despite the whispers and curious glances, he felt a sense of peace as he held her hand. Don't worry, she said, noticing his nervousness. You're doing fine. He smiled awkwardly. I've never danced like this before. That's okay, she replied. Neither have I, not really. Let's just enjoy it. They moved slowly to the rhythm of the music. He stumbled a little at first, but she laughed softly, not in a mocking way, but in a way that made him feel safe. Her laughter was gentle, like a melody he wanted to remember forever. As they continued, he realized something strange. Even though people were watching, he didn't feel exposed. Her presence calmed him. He began to speak softly as they danced, sharing small stories from his life, his mother's struggles, his late-night studies, and his dreams of one day opening a cafe where people could feel at home. She listened carefully, nodding, her eyes warm and full of understanding. You have a good heart, she said quietly. Not many people care as much as you do. He looked down, feeling a mixture of pride and embarrassment. I try, but sometimes it feels like it's never enough. It's enough, she said firmly. And it's noticed. I notice, her words made him pause. No one had ever looked at him this way, with genuine care and respect. He felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the music or the lights. It was something deeper, something he couldn't quite explain. Meanwhile, across the hall, a few students whispered and pointed. Isn't that the CEO's daughter? One said. And she's with him? Really? Why would she pick someone like him? Another asked, doubt in their voice. They didn't understand. They saw only wealth and status, not kindness or sincerity. They didn't know that she had chosen him because of his heart, not his circumstances. As the evening continued, the student began to relax. He even laughed at a joke she made, the sound of her voice blending with the music. He realized that this moment, this simple night of dancing together, was something he had never imagined possible. It wasn't about the flowers, the suit, or the music. It was about the connection they shared. After the slow dance, they sat at a quiet corner, sipping water and watching others dance. She leaned closer and said softly, I'm glad you asked me. I've had fun. He smiled, feeling a sense of relief. I'm glad too. I didn't know if you would actually come or if I'd ruin it somehow. You didn't ruin anything, she said. You made it special. For a moment, they just sat there, watching the crowd, feeling a sense of peace. The whispers and judgments of others seemed to disappear. It was just the two of them in their own little world. Then, unexpectedly, a group of students approached them. Hey, aren't you the CEO's daughter? One of them asked, a teasing smile on his face. And you're dancing with him? The poor student stiffened, unsure how to respond. He felt a wave of embarrassment, certain that she would leave him. But she didn't. Instead, she smiled at him, calm and confident. Yes, I am, she said softly, and I'm happy to be here with him. You don't have to worry about it. Her words were simple but powerful. They silenced the whispers. The other students looked at her, unsure what to say next. Some nodded, some walked away, but none could shake the truth of her sincerity. The student felt a mix of relief and pride. He looked at her, astonished by her courage. Thank you, he whispered. For what? She asked. For staying, he said quietly. For being with me even when everyone is watching. She smiled and reached for his hand. Because it's not about them. It's about us. As the night went on, they danced to several more songs, sometimes close together, sometimes laughing at their awkward steps. He noticed the way her eyes sparkled under the lights and how her smile could make even the heaviest worries feel lighter. He realized that she didn't just make the night special. She had made him feel like he mattered, like his life had value beyond money or status. At one point, the music slowed again, and they moved closer. He whispered, I never thought I'd have a night like this. Neither did I, she replied. But here we are, and in that moment they both knew it was real. Not because of the music or the flowers, not because of the hall or the whispers, but because they had chosen to be present for each other, to see each other for who they truly were. When the final song ended, they stood together, reluctant to leave the dance floor. Around them, the hall buzzed with conversation, laughter, and excitement. But they felt disconnected from it all. It was as if the world had shrunk to just the two of them. As they stepped outside into the cool night air, he felt a sense of accomplishment. Not because he had danced well or because people were talking about them, but because he had shared a moment with someone who truly mattered to him. She looked at him, noticing the way he seemed more confident, more at ease despite his worries. You were wonderful tonight, she said softly. You too, he replied, smiling. I don't think I've ever been this happy. They walked together toward the bus stop, their hands brushing occasionally. Neither spoke for a while, letting the silence carry the comfort of shared understanding. The city was quiet and the moonlight seemed to shine just for them. Before they parted ways, she looked at him seriously. You don't have to worry about who I am, she said gently. If you like me, it should be because of me, not my family. He nodded, feeling a mix of relief and gratitude. I like you for who you are, he said quietly. Not for anything else. She smiled, and for the first time that evening he felt truly seen. As he walked back to his small room, he thought about the night over and over again. He replayed every laugh, every dance step, every glance they had shared. He realized that no matter what challenges lay ahead, that night had changed him. It had shown him that kindness, courage, and sincerity could bridge even the widest gaps between worlds. And somewhere nearby, she thought the same. She had chosen to be with him not because of his looks or his future, but because of his heart. In a world where so many judged others by wealth and status, she had found someone who saw her for who she truly was. The night of the dance ended, but their story had only just begun. After the dance, everything seemed lighter for a few days. He felt as if a new energy had entered his life, giving him the courage to work harder at school and at the cafe. She had become more than just a friend. She was a presence that made him believe in himself. Even the small tasks that used to feel like a burden now seemed possible. He looked forward to their short walks near the campus, the quiet evenings when she would sit with him on the hospital bench, or the brief moments when they shared sandwiches under the streetlights. These moments, though ordinary to anyone else, were extraordinary to him. They were reminders that kindness and attention mattered more than wealth or status. But one afternoon, everything changed without warning. He had gone to return a library book when he overheard a conversation that made his chest tighten. Two students were talking near the cafe, glancing at him while whispering. Didn't you see her at the hospital? That's the CEO's daughter, one of them said. Yeah, the other replied. And she's with him? The poor student? That's crazy. She could have anyone, and she's dancing with him like they're equals. He felt his stomach drop. He didn't want to believe it, but he couldn't ignore the words. Could it be true? Had she hidden this from him all along? The thought made him feel both betrayed and unworthy. He wanted to confront her, to demand the truth, but his pride held him back. Later that evening, he sat in his small room, staring at the ceiling. Every memory of the dance replayed in his mind. The way she had smiled, the way they had danced, the way she had looked at him with warmth. But now a shadow had fallen over those memories. He wondered if she had been playing some game, or if she had simply wanted to see how someone like him would react to her wealth. Finally, unable to bear it any longer, he decided to go to the hospital to return a notebook she had left behind during one of their meetings. He wanted to see her, to hear her side of the story, but his steps were heavy, full of uncertainty and fear. When he arrived, he found her in the staff room, organizing patient files. She looked up and smiled, her face lighting up in a way that made his heart ache. Hey, she said gently. I didn't expect to see you here. He nodded, his voice catching. I found something you left behind. He handed her the notebook, unable to look her in the eye. She took it and noticed the tension in his posture. Are you okay? She asked softly. He hesitated, then blurted out, I know who you are. Her hands froze on the notebook. What do you mean? I know you're the CEO's daughter, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. I overheard some students talking. I can't believe you didn't tell me. Her eyes softened and she sighed. I wanted you to know me for who I am, not because of my family. That's why I didn't tell you. I didn't want our friendship or anything else to be about money or status. He shook his head, feeling a mix of hurt and disbelief. But why hide it? Why not trust me? I did trust you, she said gently. I just wanted to see if you would care about me as a person, not as someone with a last name that carries weight. You treated me like a human being. That's all I wanted. He looked down, conflicted. His pride and insecurities battled with his desire to believe her. I don't know if I can handle this. Your world, it's so different from mine. She stepped closer, placing a hand lightly on his arm. It's okay to feel that way. I didn't expect it to be easy. But you don't have to step away. I want you to stay if you want to. He swallowed hard, feeling emotions he hadn't allowed himself to feel before. Fear, admiration, love, and doubt all mixed together. He wanted to stay, but a voice inside him whispered that he was too small, too ordinary to belong in her world. I need some time, he said finally. I can't just forget this, she nodded, not pushing him. I understand. Take all the time you need. The days that followed were heavy. He avoided the hospital and didn't answer her messages. Every time he thought about her, a wave of longing mixed with guilt swept over him. He realized he missed her more than he had expected. He missed her laughter, the way she listened, and the simple moments they had shared. But he couldn't shake the feeling that their worlds were too different. She noticed his sudden distance and worried. She had expected that once he found out he might feel shocked, but she hadn't imagined he would retreat entirely. Every day she hoped he would come back, but he didn't. She wondered if she had been wrong to trust her heart, if she had misjudged the strength of their connection. Meanwhile, he struggled with his emotions. Working at the cafe no longer felt comforting. Even serving regular customers seemed tedious. His studies felt heavier and he lost focus easily. But no matter how hard he tried to push her from his mind, he couldn't. He remembered the night of the dance, her hand in his, the way she had smiled at him without judgment. Those memories kept returning, persistent and powerful. One rainy afternoon, he found himself near the hospital again, unable to resist. The city streets glistened under the rain, and he stood by the hospital gate watching her through the glass doors. She was helping a patient with care and attention, her gentle nature evident in every movement. She looked up briefly and smiled, unaware he was watching. He felt a pang of longing and regret. He realized that avoiding her had not protected him. It had only made him feel emptier. He wanted to speak to her, to explain his feelings, but fear and pride held him back. Finally, he gathered his courage and entered the hospital. She noticed him immediately and walked toward him with a gentle smile. "You came," she said softly. He nodded, swallowing hard. "I couldn't stay away. I was wrong to avoid you." She reached out, touching his hand lightly. "It's okay. I knew it wouldn't be easy. I just wanted you to know the truth and still be you." He looked at her, tears threatening to fall. "I was afraid," he admitted. "Afraid that I would never be enough for you. That your world would always be too big for mine." Her eyes softened. "You are enough," she said firmly. "More than enough. I don't care about money or status. I care about you. Your heart, your honesty, your kindness. Those are the things that matter to me." He felt a weight lift from his shoulders. For the first time in days, he felt relief and hope. He realized that he had been judging himself too harshly, thinking he didn't belong. But she had seen him for who he truly was, and that mattered more than anything else. They sat together for hours, talking about their fears, their dreams, and their hopes for the future. He told her about his mother, his struggles, and the small victories he had achieved despite the hardships. She shared her own experiences, the pressures of her family, and her desire to live a life defined by her own choices, not her father's wealth. By the time they parted that evening, they both felt a renewed connection, stronger than before. He realized that the truth, though difficult, had brought them closer. He no longer felt small or unworthy. He felt seen and valued, and she realized that the student she had chosen to spend time with was someone rare, someone who valued people for who they were, not for what they had. From that day on, their bond grew stronger. He learned to accept her world without feeling intimidated, and she learned to trust that his feelings were genuine. They shared more moments together, walks, simple meals, and quiet conversations that deepened their understanding of each other. Though challenges remained, whispers from others, differences in their backgrounds and personal insecurities, they faced them together. Each day they discovered that honesty, kindness, and trust could bridge even the widest gaps. The revelation of her true identity, once a source of fear and doubt, had become a turning point in their relationship. They realized that love and connection were not about wealth or status, but about seeing each other for who they truly were and choosing to stay despite the differences. And so, they moved forward cautiously but confidently, knowing that their hearts had found a rare and precious understanding, one that could withstand the world's judgments and expectations. Time passed quietly after the truth came out, but something had changed between them. The silence that once carried awkwardness had now become peaceful. They no longer needed to pretend or hide anything. Every meeting felt honest, even if the world around them still whispered. He kept working at the cafe after his university classes, and she often stopped by after her hospital shifts. Sometimes she would bring him a cup of hot coffee when his hands were tired from washing dishes. Other times he would wait near the hospital gate just to walk her home. Those small moments became their way of saying, "I'm here, you matter." It wasn't easy. People still talked. Some students at his university whispered that he was just trying to climb up by being close to her. A few even joked behind his back. But he learned to ignore them. He had faced worse in life. What mattered to him now was the truth of their bond, something real that no rumor could touch. She too faced pressure from her family. Her father had heard rumors about her spending time with a poor student, and though he never mentioned it directly, she could feel his disapproval in the silence at home. He wanted her to focus on her career, on the hospital, on the family name. But she had already decided that her heart would not be controlled by expectations. One evening, she arrived at the cafe just before closing. The city lights shimmered through the window as soft music played in the background. He was wiping the counter when she walked in, tired but smiling. "You should rest," he said, noticing how pale she looked. "I'll rest after some tea," she replied gently, sitting on a stool. "I wanted to see you before going home." He poured her a cup and sat beside her. For a moment, neither spoke. They just listened to the quiet sound of the rain outside. "I was thinking," she said softly, "about how everything started with a dance." He smiled faintly. "Yeah, I never thought that one question would change my life." "You were brave to ask," she said. "And I was brave to say yes." They both laughed quietly, the sound filling the empty cafe with warmth. But after the laughter faded, her expression grew thoughtful. "Do you ever think about what comes next?" He hesitated. "Every day." She looked at him, waiting. "I think about finishing my studies," he said slowly. "Getting a job, maybe a small apartment. I don't have much, but I want to build something on something real." He looked into her eyes. "Something that could include you if you'd want that." Her eyes softened and she nodded without hesitation. "I'd want that, more than anything." The simplicity of her words made his heart ache. It wasn't a promise of a perfect future, just an honest wish. And that was enough. In the following weeks, their connection deepened. They spent time helping at the hospital together, volunteering for free checkup camps in small communities. She admired how he spoke kindly to everyone, no matter their background. He admired her dedication to caring for people even when exhausted. They were learning not just about each other, but also about the kind of lives they wanted to build. Lives with purpose, compassion, and balance. Yet the world, as always, had its tests. One afternoon, he received a call from an unknown number. It was her father's assistant. The man spoke politely but firmly. "Sir, the CEO would like to meet you." His heart raced. He didn't know whether to be honored or afraid. He arrived at the hospital boardroom the next morning, dressed in his cleanest shirt, his hands trembling slightly. Her father was there, a tall, serious-looking man with calm but sharp eyes. He gestured for him to sit. "I've heard a lot about you," the CEO said. "My daughter speaks highly of you." He nodded nervously. "I respect her a lot, sir. She's one of the best people I've ever met." The man studied him for a moment. "You seem sincere. But sincerity doesn't always protect people from reality. You come from a difficult background, don't you?" He nodded again. "Yes, sir. I've worked since I was a teenager. I'm trying to make a better life for myself." "That's good," the CEO replied, leaning back. "But I hope you understand that my daughter's life isn't simple. She's the only heir to this hospital. Her responsibilities will grow. Being with her will mean carrying a weight you might not be ready for." He listened carefully, then said quietly, "I understand, sir. I never wanted anything from her except her company. She gave me kindness when I had nothing. I'd never do anything to hurt her." For a moment, there was silence. Then the CEO nodded slowly. "I respect your honesty, but time will show whether your words hold true." As he left the room, his heart felt heavy but calm. He knew he hadn't said the wrong thing. He had spoken from the heart. And though the conversation had been intimidating, it had strengthened his resolve. When she found out her father had spoken to him, she rushed to meet him at the park near the cafe. "I'm so sorry," she said breathlessly. "He had no right," he stopped her gently. It's okay. He was only being a father. He loves you, and I understand that. Tears welled in her eyes. But you didn't deserve that pressure. He smiled softly. If I'm going to be in your life, I have to be strong enough to face it. Her heart melted at his words. That evening, they sat together under the park's old tree, the same one they had walked by many times before. She leaned her head on his shoulder, and for the first time she truly felt that everything might be okay. Not perfect, not easy, but real. Months passed. He graduated with honors and got a stable job at a small health clinic. It wasn't much, but it was a start. She continued her nursing career, training under senior doctors and helping patients with quiet grace. They didn't see each other every day, but every meeting was filled with care, laughter, and shared dreams. Then, one evening as he was locking up the clinic, he turned around and found her standing there with a shy smile. She held 2 cups of coffee in a small envelope. "What's this?" he asked, curious. "Open it," she said with a grin. Inside was a card and an invitation. It was for the hospital's annual charity ball, the same kind of event that had brought them together the first time. She laughed softly. "Looks like we're back where we started." He smiled. "So are you asking me this time?" Her eyes sparkled. "Yes, will you be my companion to the dance?" He laughed, shaking his head in disbelief. "After everything that's happened, how could I say no?" That night they arrived at the event together, just like before. People still noticed, still whispered, but this time neither of them cared. They walked in confidently side by side, knowing that they had already faced the hardest parts together. When the music started, he extended his hand, and she took it with a smile. They moved slowly under the lights, their steps gentle and sure. Around them, the world seemed to fade. He whispered, "Do you remember what you told me that night?" She smiled. "That it doesn't matter what people think?" He nodded. "Yes, and you were right." As the song played, she rested her head against his chest, feeling his heartbeat steady and warm. "I'm proud of you," she said softly. "You didn't give up on yourself. Or on us." He smiled, holding her closer. "You taught me to believe that I could belong anywhere if my heart was honest." They danced until the lights dimmed, surrounded by people who no longer mattered. For them, it wasn't just a dance. It was a quiet celebration of every moment they had fought for, every misunderstanding they had healed, and every dream they were still building together. When they finally stepped outside, the night air was cool and filled with the soft hum of the city. She looked up at the sky and smiled. Funny how everything started with one simple question. He looked at her, his eyes full of warmth. And one brave answer. They stood there for a moment, hand in hand, the glow of the streetlights casting soft shadows on their faces. There were still challenges ahead, more than either of them could predict. But they knew something certain. They would face them together. And so, the poor student who once gathered courage to ask a simple question, and the nurse who turned out to be a CEO's daughter, walked side by side into a future built not on wealth or titles but on respect, honesty, and love that had grown quietly, from one dance, one act of kindness, and one unspoken promise that hearts can meet no matter how different their worlds may seem.